I am here today with John Hope Bryant. He is the founder and chairman of Hope Inc. and the author of Financial Literacy for All. Thank you so much for joining me here today,
Honored
John.
to be with you. Honored to be with you.
It
Great
is my
spirit, great energy, great business model, doing well and doing good at scale. You're my kind of person.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. This is the Deliberate Leaders podcast. So, what would be your number one leadership tip for our listeners today? Let's kick it off with that.
Be authentic.
Mhm.
Most people are not reasonably comfortable in their own skin. No one's comfortable in their own skin. That's a lie. And the word personality comes from the Latin root word persona, which means to perform. So our personality is often our performance we're putting on for the world. And
Mm.
people are living through their Instagram profile or what used to be their Facebook, still for some people, Facebook profile, but the sort of the cool factor, I guess, pushes people to the new. So the Instagram or the TikTok or the for some people it's their LinkedIn profile, but they have this image of themselves that doesn't reflect the essence of themselves sometimes. And real leaders know when you're BSing. Real people know when you're selling wolf tickets. And even you don't believe it. If you're selling a lie, even you know it's a lie. And so I think being authentic is just less stressful. It's more rewarding. It's more comfortable and comforting. And I think it works better. So I think being authentic and being yourself is my number one suggestion to leaders in development or leaders in practice. You are the product. Like you can be an attorney, but there's one, last time I checked, one out of 300 people in the country were attorneys. The number might have changed recently,
That's
but
true.
it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. It's crazy.
What, 300?
Yeah, I mean the number might have changed now, but I mean it's a lot of attorneys. That's the the point. And nobody needs another attorney, right?
Uh,
But if you're a personality people trust, that people have confidence in, and you also have a legal degree.
mhm.
Oh, okay, okay. Now, I want Miss Dunn. We're hiring her, and it's who you're comfortable with, right? So, how do you make people comfortable? So authenticity. Your question for the purpose of what? Of communicating relationship, trust, and comfort for the purpose of what? Developing relationship capital, which is the most important capital in the world. Who's going to put you on the board of directors? Somebody that trusts you. Who's going to hire you as a lawyer or a doctor or whatever the thing is? An advisor, because a doctor you might do that in an emergency, but somebody who trusts you, somebody who's comfortable with you, who's going to invest in you. It's not just your PowerPoint presentation, right? It goes on and on and on. I'm over answering your question, but it's a very good question.
No, and I think you just reinforce like what does it look like, what does it feel like, and why we do it. And I think that is very relevant to just suggesting that the tip of authenticity, just recognizing in ourselves when we're not. And I think that's really important. One of the things that you kind of, not kind of, you do talk about in your book is why financial literacy is the civil rights issue of this generation. Let's talk about that.
In Dr. King's day, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s day, the issue was the right to vote. For people who did not have the right to vote, for whom that was denied, that was like water. It's like breathing for them. They had no voice. They were invisible.
Mhm.
Some women today might feel with, things like Roe versus Wade, that they don't have dominion over their own bodies anymore. Now, it's not a matter whether you agree or disagree. It's who has the right to tell you what to do with your own body. And so you might feel powerless. You might feel that, you're invisible, right? And I think that to live in a system of free enterprise and not understand the rules of free enterprise must be the very definition of slavery. That's an Andrew Young quote, who was on the balcony with Dr. King when he was assassinated in '68, who also happened to build Atlanta, the city I'm in now, into the only international city in the South, in the traditional South, which is now the 10th largest economy in the entire country at almost $460 billion a year in revenue, proving doing well and doing good is a great business model. So if you're living in the largest economy on the planet, the US, 26, 27 trillion, it's the sole superpower in the world. And 70% of this economy is consumer spending, 70. And 70% of Americans are living from paycheck to paycheck. Not Black people, not brown people, everybody. And this is where your audience will start to say amen. You're making $100,000 a year and you're listening to Miss Dunn. Half of those people are living from paycheck to paycheck. You're making $250,000 a year, $250,000 a year. And by the way, it's 402 lawyers per 100,000 people in the US. It's unbelievable. That's the power of technology today, by the way. You can just get the answer, right? You're making $250,000 a year. A third of those are living from paycheck to paycheck. So whether you're white, Black, red, brown, or yellow, you all want some more green. You're living in Manhattan and you're listening to this podcast. You make $100,000 a year. It feels like $39,000. So today, this affects everybody. So people confuse making money, which is really just making a living, literally making a living, right? They confuse making money with building wealth. And you build wealth in your sleep. It's a compounding effect: stocks, bonds, investments, real estate, etc., business ownership. And you want to wake up smarter, better, bigger, broader, deeper in your knowledge, your insights, your impact. And relationship capital, if you, when you and I were talking about, before we got on camera here, we're talking about financial literacy, but also talking about relationship capital. And we're talking about specifically Delta Airlines and the challenges they're having. And I'm a coach for all 100,000, financial coach for all 100,000 Delta Airline employees through Operation Hope. So I sent Ed Bastian a note, the CEO of Delta, while we were talking, just to encourage him. Just, hey, man, love you. Know you're having a tough day. Not your fault, but keep going. Now, as busy as this dude is, he just sent me a note back. Just that quick, because what he needed was that kind of encouragement. And when he goes to bed tonight and he recounts his day, he'll be like, you know what? I got a nice note from John. Just a note of encouragement. But everything else, billionaires, shareholders, CEOs, whatever, he won't remember that stuff. He'll remember this. And when he goes to bed tonight, that warms his heart. And it also is the right thing to do. He also feels better about me. So that's compounding. It's enriched our friendship. Just me doing the right thing. You never go wrong doing right. So financial literacy is one of those things where if you understand how the system works, you can't do better. You can't do worse, and you'll probably do better. But if you don't understand how the system works, it's going to manipulate you. You're not working it, it's working you. And you're going to live a shorter life because you're stressed out. You have a surviving mindset. You live in a 550, 580 credit score neighborhood anywhere in this country, whether you're Black and brown, urban, or white, poor, rural. You're going to live to 61 years of age on average. That's our Hope Financial Index that we've done. People can go onto our website and type in their zip code. I'll tell you, you tell me your zip code, I'll tell you your credit score, I'll tell you the quality of your life. You live 15 minutes away from there in an urban city, in a 700 credit score neighborhood, and you live to 81 years old or longer. Where you live, my guess is that people on average live to 81 because the whole environment is normalized and less stressful, and people have a higher degree of wellness and a higher credit score. So all these things are connected together. For the first time, this issue is mainstreamed. What used to be an issue just for those people 30 years ago is now an issue for all people today in an interconnected economy.
Let's kind of maybe let's set like politics aside for a little bit. One of the things that I think that you highlight is that just purely from a business perspective, why the future of the US economy relies on a diverse workforce. Let's talk about that.
So I'm so glad you mentioned that because women saved America. And this is a piece I'm going to write here soon for Time Magazine. But we've been to this movie before. In 1950, I discuss this in my book, Financial Literacy for All, extensively. But in 1950, America was 90% white, which is not a racial comment. It's just math. It's just demographics, right? And which meant that what Dr. King and Andrew Young and Dr. Dorothy Height, what they did was miraculous because it was a moral thing the country did. Because blacks were only less than 10% of the population. Today, we have 40% of this country that's black and brown and not prepared, really, I can say this, to enter as a group the economy as wealth builders or even income producers at a high level of achievement for a range of reasons. We've not prepared them to succeed at the highest levels, and they aren't. But within 10 years, we'll have a majority of minorities. Meanwhile, you have baby boomers, read white, wealthy, and trying to retire. The largest population, the first generation over 65, as a majority in the history of America. Right now, this in our lifetime. So these two things are the sort of the barbells of our reality. So you have groups who've made the money and made the wealth. They're trying to exit the stage, maybe go play golf or vacation, join you in Boise or wherever, and God bless them. But the group that's coming on the field to replace them as economic generators, we've not prepared. And I would argue today we're actually doing things to slow down their development to get on the economic field. And I think that my rich friends, even my poor friends, do better if only they stay rich. If you go back to the demographics I mentioned, sorry, not the demographics, the economic ratios I mentioned about what drives the biggest economy in the world, the US economy, is consumer spending. And you have to have consumers that are, again, making good money, know how to manage it, know how to build wealth, invested in stocks, bonds, real estate investment, that are engaged in the economy. Again, the new color is green. But when I say that women have changed the world, and we've been here before, what I mean by that is in the 1960s, Dr. King gave his life. Johnson stepped off as the presidency. Interesting how we're almost here again. Republican came in, Nixon created affirmative action. That was a Republican president that created affirmative action. But some people thought there was too much progress for Black people too quickly. And so they tapped down on the impacts of Blacks embracing affirmative action. But the group that embraced it were actually white women. And in 1972, your mother could not get a bank account. In 1972, not 1872, a white woman or any woman could not get a credit card. By the way, I encourage your listeners and viewers to research and confirm everything I'm saying. I know it sounds ridiculous. It's so outer-worldly, but this is completely true. In 1972, a white woman, I'm just underscoring this so that people understand that it applied to everybody, could not get a bank loan without their husband co-signing it and guaranteeing it. We broke that barrier because affirmative action actually benefited women, and specifically white women, who were allowed to actually use something created to help, in that particular case, African Americans. And by the way, fantastic. I'm glad somebody benefited. So your audience goes, he just wasted 3 minutes on this story, on this podcast. What's the point? Here's the point. Today, American GDP can thank women because 25% of GDP today are women. 25, not like some 3%, 5%, 7% number. Somebody could roll their eyes. 25%. Trillions of dollars, $7 trillion or more, all right? It's because we unleashed the power of women to be all they could be and to have self-determination, financial literacy, economic progress, wealth creation, a place on wherever they wanted to sit on the stage of production and execution and development and growth. And as a result of that, women, of course, proved they could do two things at one time. Be a great mother and be a great achiever, if that's what they wanted to do. We are at this inflection point again. That's my point, is that people said in the 70s, women had their place. It sounds so ridiculous today. And now we are at this place again where some people are saying minorities need to stay in their place. I don't know what that means. But what I know is that demographics are destiny. And what I know is that diversity actually is a business strength. The biggest economy in the traditional South is where I'm sitting, Atlanta. Every state around us, all 6 states, have a smaller economy than the city of Atlanta. And all of them have sort of rejected as a business plan this thing we call diversity and inclusion. They don't mind it, they just haven't embraced it. And some places have actually resisted it, and those economies are stuck. And if you look at the economies that are growing, they're all ones that have been, thoughtful and open-minded to everybody who wants to contribute being able to do so. And my book talks about giving everybody a primer on financial literacy, education, to get them from the bottom to the top and contributing, so we're not speaking Mandarin in 10 to 20 years, meaning Chinese.
So the book provides fundamentals on the basics of what everyone needs to do in order to gain financial literacy or financial wealth. Are you willing to share kind of what you believe are the most common ones that most people don't understand? Like, what are the missing steps or bricks in that foundation?
I'm so glad that you phrased that statement the way you did. If you go to where the book is #1 on business finance on Amazon, as an example, it's been a bestseller for 4 months, and economics, a few of the categories. It's got excellent reviews, but there's a couple reviews. It's like 4.8%, 4.9% positives out of 5. But there's a couple reviews that they just don't like the book. And these are people who, no, I know exactly what it is. God bless them. They're 60 years of age. They're now saying, I want to get rich. And John, I'm reading this book because you're going to show me how to get rich, because you got rich, and I want you to show me how to get rich. And I didn't do that. That's not what this book's about. And they're upset. Well, I wanted to read this and have taking a pill and know how to go from making $50,000 a year to be worth $5 million in 2 years. If you don't do that, then what's the purpose of this book? Well, that's not a reality. And by the way, if you do that in 5 years, like winning the lottery, you'll probably be broke in 5 years after that, because you don't understand the fundamentals. This book acknowledges that most people don't acknowledge. They're ashamed to admit they don't understand money, even the most basic things. People think credit cards are money. It's not, right? You have the most basic thing, like the #1 way to build wealth in America, home ownership. There are a couple groups that have decided they don't want to own a home. African Americans, 41%, 42, 43% own a home, compared to 75% of our mainstream counterparts, read baby boomers that I mentioned earlier, which is a significant part of their wealth. Young people of all races, young people have decided they don't want to own a home. I think it's a mistake. 3 things have never gone down in American history: home ownership value, stock market value, American GDP. Now, somebody listening to this will go, okay, now I got this guy. He clearly doesn't know there was a 2008 mortgage crisis. He still clearly doesn't know that, so on and so forth. No, the economy goes up, real estate values go up, there's a recession, it recedes. That's what recession means. And then it adjusts above the line as it recovers above the line. And that's happened with every crisis. And so if you just stay in the stock market, if you stay in with good quality stocks, you stay in home ownership, and inertia just pulls you right now, and supply and demand. So basic things, making money, building wealth, two different things. Making a living, building a life, two different things.
Yeah.
Have a life insurance policy, even if it's a term life insurance policy. If you're young and healthy and you just got married, you can, for $25 a month, you can have a $100,000 life insurance policy. For 50 to 75 bucks a month, max, you can have a $1 million policy if you're young and healthy. If you, God forbid, something happens to you. I remember a young couple got married, worked for me. The gentleman worked for me. He passed away in a car accident in Turkey. This is a decade ago. And if he had had a life insurance policy, that whoever was in his will, and you should have a will, would have gotten $1 million instantly, because he passed away and they were his identified recipients, beneficiaries. So we want you to live a long life, but life happens. You should have a life insurance policy, even if it's a term policy. You should have a will, if it's a one-page will. You should consider alternative forms of income. The easiest things are stocks, bonds, real estate. Buy one house, get two homes in a working class neighborhood as rentals. Buy it, rehab it, use local vendors. So reinvesting in the community. And now you've got 3 homes, and you're going to be worth $1 million net within 3 to 5 years if you follow that plan. And of course, you can start a business as another alternative, which I, of course, love. It's not for everybody. You can become an entrepreneur, which is what I am. But there's some basic things you should do. When you get $1, you didn't make $1, you made 90 cents. Put 10 cents aside. The best way to do that, compounding, 401k plan. If you work for an employer who has a 401k plan, it's free money. It's found money. They're going to match you $1 for every dollar you put in. Do not waste. Do not stop. I'm all for employers listening to this. Give your employers opt out of 401k, not opt in. Make them say, I don't want it versus I want it. Somebody who's financially illiterate is not going to say I want it. Somebody listening to this in Boise or wherever, making less than $60,000 a year. If you make $38,000 or $40,000 a year as a teacher, you have 2, 3 children, the government owes you a check. It's called the Earned Income Tax Credit. And if you make $38,000 or $40,000 a year as a teacher and you have 3 children, the check is $5,000 cash. And if you've never filed, it's retroactive for 3 years. That's $15,000. That's more money than a family making $30,000, $40,000 a year has ever seen in their life. That can reset their credit cards, pay off their car loan, put the down payment for a mortgage. We can go on and on and on, and then go to my Hope Financial Coaches, which is scholarship, is free because it's scholarship funded by our partners. And we can help get your credit score up, your debt down, your savings up, so you can get those credit cards refinanced from 28% interest down to 12 to 14%, get that mortgage refinanced down to 6, 7%. Maybe you can buy a house there from somebody who's got a 3.5% mortgage. That would definitely, that's a 3.5% mortgage is probably worth as much as buying the right house, right? If the mortgage is assumable. So these are a lot of little things that are easy. There's nothing I just said that's rocket science, but that people aren't doing it, they aren't thinking about it. And this book helps you ground yourself in fundamentals that can change your life and keep you from arguing with your mate about money.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Let's talk about time for money. I know a lot of our listeners may own businesses, but also an awful lot of our listeners are employed with other people. So you have a theory around the time and effort for money and the conditions under which you should agree to work. What are those?
Well, I'm ruthless about my time, and I'm so passionate about this topic that I've talked about it a half dozen different ways. So I'm not quite sure which particular way you're talking about it in this particular instance. But if what I'm saying is that there are different ways that you engage in capitalism, and everybody is engaged in capitalism, even those who don't like it. Because if you're an employer right now, the employee, sorry, right now, you're trading your human capital, your talent, for a paycheck. That's capitalism. You are using your human capital in exchange for compensation. You are engaged in capitalism. And I think what you're referring to is you can start as a gig worker, a handyman or a handywoman, have complete flexibility of your time, drive or Uber or Lyft, do deliveries. There's a lot of gig work. A good portion of today's economy are gig workers. I think it's 30, it may be as much as 30% of all employment today are gig workers, if I remember that number accurately. So those have the most flexibility, but the least amount of stability. You don't have a guaranteed paycheck. You don't have benefits and so on and so forth, but you have flexibility and freedom. And then you have employment, 9 to 5, and that gives you a great deal of freedom. At 5 o'clock, the problem is the employer. Bye. But maybe you have some basic health care and some basic benefits, but you don't get a lot. And you'll never get rich working a 9 to 5 job. Sorry to tell you. That's why they call it making a living, not making a life. And then you have salaried workers who the employer can technically call you anytime they like. It may call you at 8 o'clock at dinner, but you make a decent salary. You have good benefits. You may have participated in a stock ownership plan for the company. So you're doing trade-offs of time for freedom, for resources and opportunity. But then you've got C-suite workers, which are, I consider you, Ms. Dunn, if you're working in a company, you'd be an ideal C-suite leader. That's the top tier of leadership. And they're highly compensated, but they can be called by the employer. I mean, Delta's CEO is calling his people on the weekends, at night, at 2 a.m, and they better answer the phone. They're trying to solve their problems, not created by themselves, I might add. But you're highly compensated for that, and you get stock and all that stuff. And then you've got the person go, you know what? I think I'm going to work for myself. And that's a business owner. And so now you have the higher level of achievement, where you're going to earn 6 or 7 figures if you do it right. But your time's not your own anymore. It's owned by that customer. It's owned by your vendors and your priorities. And then you got the craziest version of this model, which is me, which is an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur works 18 hours a day to keep from getting a job. But now I'm back to, I don't have freedom, but I have control. Like, I'm sorry, actually, I do have freedom. I don't have control. I'm completely free to do what I want, when I want, as I want. But I'm controlled by the obsession, passion I have to create this thing, and I'm controlling. It's really crazy, like a circular firing squad. I'm controlling myself with the thing I'm not in control of. So I love this thing, and I'm obsessing about it, and it has a hold on me. But I could technically decide not to do it and not work all day or all week. So, but I fail, or somebody would replace me at the top of the food chain. I hope that's what you were referring to. If not, it was at least an interesting definition of the different forms of capitalism for your audience.
Very few people talk about the fact that, like, when I think about entrepreneurship, right, that you just described it in a way that is just so real, but not many people talk about it or position it that way. So thank you for doing that.
One thing I am real.
I want to hit on one final topic before we wrap up this conversation, and I think I'm just going to really kind of dive in, and into, like, I'm speaking with you right now. So, what particular challenges are facing Black entrepreneurs and businesses in the United States?
Whiplash.
Mm.
Um, we're sitting in a moment in history right now. History does not necessarily feel historic when you're sitting in it. I put this in the book, Financial Literacy for All, by the way. I walk people through how Black people got to where they are from a mathematical perspective, non-emotionally, as you said, non-politically. As you know, I've been an advisor for 3 U.S. presidents from both parties. I walk people through the history, the non-emotional history of how we got here, how all of us got here, so that they understand where we are when we say we're here and what the starting point looks like. And The first Reconstruction, which was after slavery, there was this push to give people, to offer blacks self-determination, an opportunity for that. No one deserves the right to succeed, but an opportunity for it. And Abraham Lincoln did that. It was 40 acres, a mule, a bank. That was January, February, March 1865. And then he promised blacks the right to vote and was assassinated in April 1865 by Booth, who said that's a bridge too far. The Reconstruction began. There was all this progress. The lights were on in America because of Lincoln's assassination, and the reversal of the whiplash effect of those who then said, slow down, that's a bit too much progress, too fast. The Ku Klux Klan was introduced. A lot of other things were introduced. The federal government pulled out of the South, and progress ended. And now you fast forward to the Civil Rights Movement. Again, once again, all this progress. The Second Reconstruction, Dr. King gets assassinated. And I just recounted earlier how things were started, and then sort of people said too much too soon, and it was ended. But at least my white female sisters succeeded when we could not. Then the third Reconstruction was George Floyd's murder. It was really started with the pandemic, but it was triggered by George Floyd's murder. There was 50 to 300 billion dollars, depending on how you calculate it, of commitments from corporations to help with the 4-year-old social justice reckoning of Black America, not the government, private sector. And it was brilliant, amazing, and beautiful. And then here comes the whiplash of, some people say that's too much, too soon, and it's undeserving, and whatever other phrase people want to use. And then the thing that became a positive all of a sudden became a negative. So the issue now, so nothing changed about Black business owners or Black entrepreneurs or Black strivers, but the access to capital door shut, the opportunity door shut, the internship door shut, the program designed to give them a leg up to rebuild the ladder of their success, or give them an opportunity to achieve it, shut. Now, somebody's listening to this going, well, why should there be a ladder anyway? Okay. I want the person listening to this to say, who helped me get that job? Did I just do it because I had a great resume and I filled out an application? Or did somebody say on a golf course, at lunch, through a friend, through mommy, daddy, hey, I have a job over here. I have an internship. Do you want that? I can get you into school. Can I help you? Relationship capital. So if you hang around 9 broke people, you'll be the 10th. And so most wealthy people hang around wealthy people, and they hook each other up. And I understand it. And most poor people hang around poor people, and they can't do anything but talk about trade stories about their poverty and somebody else's wealth, which is why poor people talk about celebrities so much versus their own ideas. So to answer your question, there's an optimism that sustains, which is very encouraging, but there's a whiplash effect with regard to access to capital and opportunity, which is very pronounced and growing. And the cancellation of things like diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, even though that has been politicized and made to be seen in a certain way. So whether the program was legitimate or not, it's all sort of hard to talk about now. That has to be separated from whether diversity, the program, fine, people don't like the program. I say, fine, you want to kill it. Kill it. I don't care, actually. But what I've embraced and I'm about to introduce is inclusive economics.
Mm.
And inclusive economics says, if you're a woman in a small town in Idaho, do you want to have a shot at a job or an apprenticeship at the biggest company in your state? There should be a tax incentive for that company to reach down and give her a place on that ladder to go from the bottom to the top. If you're a poor white in the Appalachians, should you have a shot at starting your own business, but you don't know anybody who's wealthy, you have no capital? A tax break from corporations to provide $30,000, $50,000 venture capital funding for these small entrepreneurs. If you're in prison and you paid your debt to society and you're a great hustler, can you redeem yourself? You can't go work at a big company with a record like that, but you can start a company. Can you redeem yourself? And can there be, again, venture capital and financial literacy and mentorship that allows you to go from the bottom re-enter society to the top. By the way, moonshine running is where NASCAR came from, for those who did not know that. If you are in the urban core and you want an internship or apprenticeship, you want to be taught financial literacy, there should be tax breaks from corporations to incentivize that. There should be entrepreneurship academies that are created because corporations and philanthropists are incentivized to do that. You know, we're the most philanthropic nation in the world, financial literacy, not just because we're great people, but because the tax system rewards philanthropy. The tax system rewards home ownership. That's why we have a 75% home ownership rate for those who are financially literate. So I'm just trying to create a system for the bottom that already exists at the top.
Um, I think the repositioning of all that is very beautiful. So thank you for kind of shedding light on all the ways that you can do that. So that's incredible. Is that specifically effort of what Hope Inc. does?
Operation Hope is sort of like we're the largest financial literacy coaching organization in America, by the way. 400 employees I have. Thank you. We have 300 physical offices in 42 states and 1,500 satellite offices with our partners. I've already mentioned that we're the coach for all Delta employees. We're UPS employees. They're coaching in their headquarters and some of their hub offices. Pfizer just brought us on. KKR and Apollo and Wall Street have companies they own. They're bringing us on to coach the employees of the companies they own, like the Venetian Hotel employees in Las Vegas, as an example. During the pandemic, we started with Harley Davidson. They were having some financial issues and couldn't continue, but we were with Harley Davidson for a while. We were in banks. We're the only nonprofit that allowed to operate outside of a bank branch in U.S. history, getting the bank out of the no business back into the yes business at scale. And so we want to become America's financial coach at scale. But we're a nonprofit investment bank that basically says to the corporation, the bank, whoever, the government, we know you mean well. You don't have the time or the budget to go do this good thing over here, and maybe you don't even know how to do it, but you mean well. Let us do it for you. We'll go structure a program or solution and bring you back the structured solution with a product attached that's beneficial to you, and all you have to do is say yes. So we've done that with banking. I just explained that. We're doing that with corporations. I explained that. We're doing it with emergency disaster finance response and recovery, a space that we created for the federal government after 9/11. We're doing that in Maui right now and places that where there's a disaster. We've just co-chaired Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI. I think it's Steve Jobs of this generation. We've just co-chaired the AI Ethics Council together. So we're doing this with regards to artificial intelligence to make sure that the people at the middle and the bottom don't get left by the future of artificial intelligence. I'm co-chair with Doug McMillan, the CEO of Walmart, on financial literacy for all, working to get 80% of corporate CEOs, Fortune 500s, to embrace financial literacy as a business issue, not a philanthropy issue. So we're this investment banker, if you will, that sort of nonprofit investment banker that takes these pieces, brings them together, and makes 10 ones valuable like 20 as a group. So that a company, a government, whoever says, oh, that's a great investment, great return investment, we'll do that. And so we're up a $70 million budget a year that allows us to do that. We've done $4.5 billion of capital deployment as a result of that. I have other businesses on the commercial side of my life, for profit, to prove, like you, that you can be a good capitalist. I love that about your business model, by the way. You as an individual, I'm talking about you, Ms. Dunn.
John Hope Bryant, I just want to thank you for being here with me today and bringing hope to so many people, and amen to financial literacy for all.
Well, it's my deep honor, and I want to thank all my partners for whom, without whom, this would not be possible. And I want to thank you for bringing this to your listeners, because Dr. King never would have had a movement without the media.
So true. My pleasure.
And podcasting is a new way that we communicate with smart, thoughtful people who want to have a positive impact in the world, and they're going to be listening to people like you who are thoughtful.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much.